AI is everywhere these days, right? It feels like it's all anyone's talking about.
Yeah, totally.
And it can be tough to sort through all the noise and figure out what's actually worth paying attention to.
Uh-huh.
But when I came across Alex Utopia's blog post, well, I knew we had to do a deep dive into this.
Oh, yeah.
He's not just some AI hype man. This is a guy with like 17 years of real-world marketing experience.
Wow.
So he's got this really interesting perspective because he's not just talking about the tech itself.
Right.
He's looking at how it's changing the entire landscape of content creation, marketing, the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, he covers so much ground. It's kind of amazing. Like,
Yeah.
he goes from talking about, like, the philosophical implications of AI on attention spans to,
Yeah.
like, very specific AI tools and tactics that people can use right now.
Exactly. And that's what I found so fascinating. It's like he's got this big picture vision, but then he's also down in the trenches,
Yeah.
getting his hands dirty.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, for example, he talks about this thing where he used AI to basically recreate the soundtrack from True Detective.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Right.
So he's using these AI music generators, which, okay, that's cool. We've heard about those.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is he's almost like hacking them with SEO tactics.
Really?
Yeah, he's using all these really specific keywords to like guide the AI's output.
Interesting.
And he says it can create music that's almost indistinguishable from the original.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. And it makes you think, like, what does that mean for artists, Can anyone just replicate anyone else's style now?
Right. Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about what Alex is doing. He's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Totally.
And he explains it in a way that makes it understandable. Like, he breaks down how these AI music models are trained on this massive data set of music
Huge, yeah.
that humans have, like, meticulously labeled with all these different attributes.
Right.
So when you give it these very specific keywords, it's like you're tapping into that collective understanding of, like, what makes that sound.
Like giving it a musical recipe.
Exactly.
And it can whip up something incredibly close to what you're looking for, which is both amazing and a little scary.
For sure. And the fact that these tools are becoming so accessible, like anyone can use them now.
Right.
It's already starting to disrupt the music industry in a big way.
And it brings up all sorts of questions about copyright and ownership.
Huge questions, yeah.
Like, if anyone can create a hit song at the push of a button, what does that even mean anymore?
It's a whole new world.
It is, and it's both exciting and a little unnerving, which is, I think, the perfect way to describe this whole AI thing.
Totally.
But, Alex doesn't just talk about music. He also gets into the whole influencer game
Right.
and how just because someone has millions of followers doesn't mean they actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, he's got that great anecdote about Elon Musk,
Oh, yeah.
talking about how he's got the most followers, so he must be the best at using X.
Which obviously isn't how it works.
Not at all.
Which is why I appreciate that Alex actually breaks down influencers into these different categories.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he talks about the famous in real life folks, like they'd have followers no matter what they posted.
Makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there are the first and lucky ones who, they jumped on a trend early.
Uh-huh.
But then there's this third group, and this is who he says we should really be paying attention to.
Okay.
He calls them the hard work and longevity influencers.
I like that.
Yeah. These are the ones who've put in the work, they've figured out systems that work,
Right.
and they've been doing it consistently.
So it's not just about luck. It's about having a repeatable process.
Exactly. And that's the kind of advice I think is really valuable in this day and age because there's so much noise out there.
Totally. It's about separating the signal from the noise.
Yes. And Alex gives us the tools to do that. But he doesn't just leave us with warnings about bad advice.
Okay.
He actually lays out a roadmap for building what he calls a personal media empire.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And it all starts with understanding what he calls the new attention economy.
The new attention economy. Okay, and what's that all about?
Well, Alex doesn't mince words. He says our attention spans are now officially shorter than a goldfish's.
Oh no, shorter than a goldfish, really?
I know, right?
Wow.
But when you think about it, can you really argue?
That's true. I mean,
Like, imagine getting a formal letter today. It would be like receiving a message from the past.
it really would, yeah.
Right. And Alex argues that this whole shift towards shorter and shorter content, well, AI is a driving force behind it.
That makes sense. We're just inundated with information these days.
Constantly. So our brains are just like wired to seek out the most efficient way to process everything.
So we're all about that instant gratification.
Pretty much. And that's why it's more important than ever to understand how to create content that grabs attention immediately.
And that leaves a lasting impact.
Exactly. And that's where AI can be this incredible tool, but you have to know how to use it, which is what Alex dives into next.
Okay, let's hear it.
He actually outlines 4 main ways to build a business using AI.
4.
Yeah, so you can create software, like the AI tools themselves. You can implement solutions for others.
Right.
You can consult.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can use AI to create something completely new.
Got it.
But no matter which path you choose, his biggest piece of advice is focus.
Focus. Okay, so don't try to do everything at once.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in all the possibilities and try to be everything to everyone.
Oh, I know. It's so tempting.
Right. But Alex warns us against that. He says we need to really hone in on our strengths, figure out what we can offer that nobody else can.
So it's about finding your niche, your unique value proposition.
Yes. And that's where his advice on personal branding comes in, which I think is so crucial in this day and age.
Absolutely, especially with so much competition out there.
Right. And here's the thing. Alex says that these free AI tools, they've completely leveled the playing field. You don't need a huge budget or a team of experts to create professional-looking content anymore.
That's true.
Anyone with a laptop and an internet connection can do it.
So what's the key then? If everyone has access to the same tools.
It's all about standing out in a sea of content, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive in.
It's about, now everyone's got the same paintbrush, you know?
Okay.
So what are you going to paint? What's your story?
I love that analogy. It really gets to the heart of it.
Right. It's not enough to just have the tools. You have to know how to use them.
And more importantly, what you're using them for.
Exactly. And that's what I appreciate about Alex. He doesn't just throw these big ideas at you.
Yeah, she brings it down to earth.
He gives you actionable advice. Okay, remember that bit about color consistency in your branding?
Oh, yeah.
Don't just say blue. Be specific.
Royal blue, teal cerulean.
Yes. It seems like such a small thing, but it shows you're paying attention.
There's intentionality.
Exactly. Yeah. And that you're thinking about your brand as a whole.
Creating a cohesive experience.
Yes. Which can be tough when you're trying to do a million things at once.
Oh, tell me about it. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Right. And Alex calls us out on it. He's seen it happen time and time again.
So what's the solution?
Focus. That's his big thing.
Easier said than done sometimes,
It is, but it's crucial, especially in this AI landscape where there's just endless possibilities.
So how do we even begin to narrow it down?
Well, Alex says we have to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Yeah.
What am I uniquely good at?
Okay, so what's my strength?
What can I offer that nobody else can?
My unique value proposition.
Yes. And maybe most importantly, who is my target audience?
Right, because you could have the best product in the world.
But if you're marketing it to the wrong people...
It's going nowhere.
Exactly. He gives this example of these AI experts who built this massive following within the AI community.
Okay.
But then they tried to sell something that was really meant for everyday consumers.
Yeah.
And their message totally flopped.
Because they were speaking the wrong language.
Yes. They hadn't built those relationships. They didn't understand their audience.
It's so important to find your tribe, those people who really get what you're doing.
100%. And, speaking of finding your people, that's where Alex's own story is so inspiring.
Yeah. Oh, how so?
Well, he talks about how he went from having just a few hundred followers.
Okay.
Most of whom weren't even really engaging with his content.
The dreaded ghost followers.
Right. And in just a year, he grew that to a thriving community of over 5,000 engaged followers.
Wow. 5,000. That's impressive. What was the secret?
X Spaces.
Really? X Spaces.
He calls it cheat mode for networking.
Cheat mode. I like it. But why X Spaces? What's so special about them?
Well, he says it allows for this different kind of connection than, just liking posts or commenting.
Okay.
Because you're hearing someone's voice, you're picking up on their energy.
For human.
Exactly. And that human connection is invaluable, especially in a digital world that can feel so impersonal.
Absolutely. It's like that personal touch cuts through all the noise.
And it's not like he just stumbled onto this X Spaces success either.
So he put in the work.
Oh, yeah. He talks about how he had to figure it out, observing what others were doing, experimenting with different approaches.
So it was a learning process.
Totally. He wasn't afraid to try things out, see what worked, what didn't. It's like he took that old saying, learn by doing, and applied it to this whole online world.
And it just goes to show, even with all this AI, those human connections, they still matter.
Yeah, it's easy to get so caught up in the tech and the algorithms.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's still people connecting with people.
That's what it all comes down to, and I think that's a really important thing for people to remember.
It is, and it brings us back to Alex's main point. AI, it's a tool.
Not a magic bullet.
Exactly.
Can't do the work for you.
And it's definitely not a substitute for being human.
For sure. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways you think our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, we've covered so much ground. From AI-generated music to influencers to building your own little media empire.
A lot to unpack.
I think the biggest takeaway is that this whole AI revolution, it's not slowing down.
It's only going to get bigger.
Exactly. So the question is, how are you going to navigate it?
Right. Are you going to be someone who's intimidated by it?
Or someone who embraces the possibilities?
Because the winners in this new world, they're not going to be the ones who are afraid of change.
It's about being adaptable.
And resourceful. And that's what Alex's work really highlights for me.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to dive into the nitty-gritty.
But he never loses sight of the human element.
Yeah. And that's so crucial. It's about using these AI tools.
To enhance our own creativity.
Not replace it.
Right. So to our listener out there,
We want to hear from you.
if you could build your own media empire with just your laptop and an internet connection, what story would you tell?
What makes you different?
Let's hear it.